Hello and welcome to Knitting on the Float. My name is Tracy and I'm your host. I am coming to you from a very beautiful sunshiny day in the Vancouver area. We have just hit double digits. It is 10 degrees Celsius. I've had to put the awnings out today because, as you can see from the top of my head, the sunshine is pouring into these windows. I don't mind, but it does mean I might need to lean forward a little bit, which maybe means you get a better preview of some of the knitting I've been up to this week. I hope that wherever you are, you have had a fantastic week and you are ready to sit down and enjoy some time working on your project of choice while I chatter away about the knitting I've gotten up to this week. And this week it is all knitting. Before we do that, let me tell you where you can find me. I am Tracy RR on Ravelry and I am at Knitting on the Float on Instagram. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. This is a podcast which usually I share my knitting projects, and this week that is what I will be doing, so welcome. And if you are a returning viewer, welcome back. I know you have your project of choice. You have a cup of whatever it is you are drinking, whether it is a nice warm beverage or something to cool you down, you have it. You are ready to sit down for a little bit and have a lovely visit. It is now time for tea time, since I'm holding one of my favorite mugs. I actually think this is probably my absolute favorite mug. This is my Haunted Mansion mug. I got this in Disney World several years ago. And I just love this mug. It is nice and big. At the very bottom it says hurry back, and right now it is smelling lovely. I am drinking some Earl Grey tea that is from Starbucks. My son Isaac works at Starbucks, and every week he gets to bring home something special, whether it's a pound of coffee or tea bags, and he brought me home some Earl Grey. So today I am drinking Teavana Earl Grey and enjoying the sunshine. Today I'm going to bake a cake as well. So it's going to be a lovely day all around, and I think we shall just cheer to having a lovely day. Cheers to that. Sometimes the best laid plans don't always go as you expect them. This week I was thinking I was going to spend most of my time on one or two projects, and the one project I thought was going to get the most of my time didn't get as much as I wanted, and the other project that I had hoped to spend a little bit of time with didn't get any attention whatsoever. However, I did pull some things out of the knitting drawer that I don't even think I've got documented on Ravelry. I also started a new project. So we don't always know where the crafting week is going to take us, but sometimes going with the flow and also going with whatever brain power you have at the time is definitely the way you have to go if you want to get a little bit of crafting in your life. I did make one pair of socks on the circular sock machine. I've already given those to Nathaniel. He had a ski trip yesterday, so I gave him a pair of socks so that he would have a nice pair of warm woolies to take with him on the ski hill. He had a good day. He was tired when he got home, but I think his feet were warm, so that was definitely something important. I am getting better on the sock machine, which is nice. I still have to make a pair for myself, and at some point I will get to that. And I also am wanting to switch out the 64 cylinder for the 72 so I can make some socks for Greg and Isaac, because they have bigger feet than Nathaniel and I. But before I switch out the cylinder, I definitely want to make myself a pair of socks. I'll get to it. I definitely will. This week, I mentioned I had expected to work on one particular project, and I was actually hoping I might have a finished object for you, but I'm really not much farther along than I was last week. A little farther along, but not as much as I would have liked. And you know what? That's okay sometimes. The project that I'm talking about is my Morticia sweater, and this is a pattern by Andy Satterland, and it is a gorgeous, gorgeous sweater pattern. I am enjoying working on it. I am on Sleeve Island, and I am finding that it is a little bit of a slog. I'm a little farther along than I was last week, but again, I don't feel like I'm much farther along. I'm still on sleeve 1, and as I mentioned, it's a little farther along, but not too much. I think that what I will do is I am going to put a marker here so that next week we can see what progress I have made. And I have this little clip here. I know it's a little boring one. I don't want to use a boring clip. I'm going to pull out one of my beautiful Corner of Craft ones. And I have, this is my Corner of Craft collection. I think that maybe we need a purple unicorn on this project. So here's my beautiful little purple unicorn. I have popped on this cute little purple unicorn right where I've left off. And next week we will see how far I have gotten. And if I do finish off the sleeve and start the second one, we'll be able to see how much knitting I got because I'll leave the progress keeper there. The only way I'm going to take the progress keeper off is if I completely finish the sweater and then of course block it and everything. This is a gorgeous pattern and I am enjoying knitting it, but as I said, it is a bit of a slog getting through the sleeves. It's not just straight stockinette going in circles. It does have a 4-round repeat, which is not difficult, but it does sometimes take a little bit of brain power, and unfortunately this week my brain power was a little bit low. I am hoping, crossing fingers, that this skein here will take me out completely for the sleeve. I think I've got about 60 more rounds to do on the mesh part, and then I have the cuff to do. So I'm hoping I could at least get to the cuff before having to switch skeins, and then there might be a little alternating that has to happen. So hoping that I don't have strange lines and I'll be able to get my yarn switched out without too much difficulty. I still have this skein and another that's on the knitting table, so 2.5 skeins left. I definitely have enough yarn. It's just whether I have to start alternating, and I was really hoping on the sleeves to not have to do that, but they are really big and balloony and puffed sleeves. They're absolutely gorgeous, but I may have to do a bit of alternating skeins, and that's going to be a little bit complicated, especially in the mesh, but I can do it. Anyway, that is living in my beautiful bunny bag that my wonderful sister-in-law gifted to me a couple of years ago. Bunnies and squirrels, and hopefully in the next week we'll see a little bit more progress than we got up to this week. I did get a little bit done, just not as much as I expected. This podcast is going to be a little bit disjointed because just when I was about to introduce the second project that I worked on this week, I noticed that the sun shadows were a little bit too harsh. I knew they were beforehand, but I decided to take a little break from podcasting, and I have baked a birthday cake for Greg, and I've made some icing as well. The sun has retreated a little bit. It's still a beautiful day, but a little bit easier to podcast. So let's get back to the second project that I worked on, and it is living in my beautiful vintage fairy lights bag. This is a bag by Daniel George, who is Little Bobbins, and I've had it for many, many years, and I love the gold sparkle in the linen. And back in 2021, I cast on this project. It was supposed to be my Christmas Eve cast on, and my plan had been to knit the Be the Light socks, which is a pattern by Alice Jeffries, and it is a lovely pattern, but I wanted to do it cuff down instead of toe up. So I decided that I was going to just play around with the pattern a little bit. The problem is that once I got through the cuff and I got to the patterning section, I realized that I had too many stitches on my needles. I had cast on for a 64 stitch sock, and in fact, it was a 60 stitch sock. And it wasn't an easy, knit two together in a couple spots just because of the way that the ribbing went down into the patterning. So I sat on it for a year. And my Christmas Eve cast on 2021 turned into my Christmas Eve cast on 2022. I have used this gorgeous skein of On Trial. This is a Nora George Yarns on Super Sock, and this was from, Tracy used to do a Great Characters of Literature Club, and this was from the To Kill a Mockingbird Club. So I used this one, and I think maybe the mini that I used may have been left over from the To Kill a Mockingbird mini set, but I can't remember 100%. So I'm not sure whether it is a mini from the same collection or whether it's something different. Anyway, I have taken the cuff that I had from my Be the Light socks, changed it into the Feathering the Nest socks. And the Feathering the Nest pattern is a pattern by Daniel George, who is Little Bobbins. And it is a lovely textured pattern. This is now my third pair of this pattern socks. The first Feathering the Nest, which was my test knit, is my absolute favorite pair of socks to wear. I love the color, I love the fit, and I just love I just love them. The second pair that I knit, I traded in a swap with somebody, and those were beautiful. And now I am on my third pair. So I've done a little bit more color at the top just because that's what was called for in the Be the Light socks, but that's okay. I have cast on sock 2. That's what I did this past Christmas Eve for the Christmas Eve cast on, but right now I am working on sock 1 and through the leg. I didn't do a whole lot this week, but I did do about a half a repeat with that lovely pattern texture. So even though it didn't get a lot of love, it got a little bit, and it deserves a little bit of a spotlight today on the podcast. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I'll be working on these a little bit more, and we'll see some more progress. It would be fantastic to get sock 1 off soon so that I can then start using the On Trial colorway for sock 2. Anyway, that is pattern 2 that I worked on this week, and whoops, I dropped that on top of the box with the progress keepers. The third project that I worked on came from a project bag right here, and I think it was from Simply Sparrow Yarns. I could be wrong. I'll have to look it up and put it down here. But I have this gorgeous project bag, and oh, this fabric is always just makes me happy. In this bag, I have some projects that never really quite made it to Ravelry, and they're just scrappy projects. So I have some beautiful leftover yarns, some leftover lovelies. Do you hear that? That is somebody going by in a speedboat, super fast. So in a moment, we're gonna hear lights tinging. Things are gonna start moving. It's gonna feel a little bit crazy around here, but I'll try and talk through it. We're coming into spring. People are gonna bring their boats out. Anyway, I have these lovely leftover lovelies, and I decided to make some scrappy socks a few years ago. So every once in a while, these get pulled out and I do a little bit of work on them. I need to take just a moment. Usually, you don't feel the house move, but when somebody flies by in a speedboat like that guy just did, you can hear it, I can feel it. I might need to get some gravel for the summer. Anyway, these are some scrappy socks that I've been working on for probably a few years now, and they really don't get much love, but I'm just enjoying sort of putting these pinks and reds together. This one here, I am through the heel flap and through the heel turn, and I just need to pick up my stitches. And this one, I am still working on the leg, and I believe I have introduced the third colorway, which will then go into the heel flap and heel turn. So these have been sitting, these are taking up needles. At some point I will get to them, but I had also had a few other balls of yarn and another project that I had started in this bag. So that's why I pulled this out of the drawer. And this is the undocumented projects, the ones that they're scrappy things and I haven't put them on Ravelry or recorded them as objects I'm working on. So that's the bag they had been in. And I have currently moved one of the projects that had been in that bag into this lovely plum blossom bag by Birdleg Bags. It's a nest bag. But I've also got a second project that I started this week. But I'll talk first about the one that I had started a while back. And I had to attend a meeting earlier this week, and I wanted something that I could easily knit on. I didn't have to have any brain power. And I was trying to decide between this that I'm going to share and the pattern that I have cast on. And I decided to go with this one because it was just simple knitting in the round. And for this project, I'm using this gorgeous pink. And I'm sorry to say, I do not remember the name of this yarn. If I have it, I'll put it down. It is a Nora George yarn, and it is a BFL cashmere silk blend. But it's this gorgeous, soft pink. And several years ago, I cast on to make just a very simple hat. And you can see I had done the ribbing and I had started doing some stockinette, and I've got this ridge. I had it on, I believe, a 32-inch needle. And since I had cast this on, I had picked up a 16-inch Chow-Gu, and just you can see that line from switching over the needles and just the different tensioning that I had at that point. So just a plain hat going in the round, and this was a nice project to take with me to the meeting because I did not have to think. I could just sit and knit. And sometimes that's what you need to do. No brain power, just knitting in the round, circles, circles, circles. And as I said, you can see where I've got this weird little bump from tension. That is how much, for the most part. I may have done a couple rounds since, but that's how much I did during the meeting. I believe I have 142 or 144 stitches on this hat, just a fingering weight yarn. So I just wanted a lightweight hat that I can put on when I go outside. It's not too cold, but you want to wear a hat. And I think this BFL silk cashmere blend is really lovely and will make just that lovely, soft, delicate hat to wear. So something that I will work on the next little while, and I need to figure out how I want my decreases. And I also plan to use this for the next project, so leftovers. So I'm hoping that I have some leftovers because I do have plans for this yarn. So that was the project I took to the meeting, but before the meeting I cast on this project thinking maybe I would take this one instead. And for this I am still using the same base, so I believe this one is called Pollen, and this is Nora George Yarns and BFL Silk Cashmere in Pollen. And I'm not sure of the colorway name of this one. I will try and see if I have it somewhere. And I think it might be Storm Cloud or something along that line, although it doesn't look too stormy in this blue. But anyway, this is the trio that I plan to use for this project that I'm going to share with you. So project number 4 got cast on Monday morning, afternoon, and it is a snuggle down cowl. Several years ago I test knit Jules Hill's snuggle down cowl, and it's one of the projects I wear a lot in the winter. I absolutely love it. My first one I used the Wool Kitchen, and it was a sock blank, and I think it was something to do with mermaids, and it had a shift from pinks through blues into greens into yellow, and I absolutely love wearing that one, especially because I can turn it upside down, and if I feel like having pink at the top of my face I can do that. If I feel like having greeny yellow at the top I can switch it too. So I have put 2 repeats of the Pollen. I'm going to do 3 repeats of the blue, and then my plan is to do 2 repeats of the pink, and you can sort of see it knit up. I think that that will look really nice and soft. And last week I shared with you, there it is there, that I had some beautiful yarn from Hedgerow, and I am using the Surrey Silk in Naked, which is undyed, and this is adding just the loveliest halo and softness, and also taming down the colors a little bit too. So if you look at the bright yellow, it's just looking that little bit softer with the white yarn added to it, and of course just snuggle down, wonderful. So just going in circles and enjoying that. This is a lovely pattern to revisit, and I am making this one for myself because even though I love my first one, I think it'll be fun to have a second one that I can play around with some other colors. And I just love this base, and I've had these yarns put aside to do something special with, and yes, I decided that another snuggle down cowl would be lovely. And I was saying how last week I thought I would have a really great chance to work on my sleeves for my Morticia. When I pick up the snuggle down, it's really hard to put down. So Morticia kind of got pushed on the wayside because I just love this pattern. And while it's still kind of cooler weather, I think I'd like to finish this off too. But again, I want to finish off my Morticia while it's still cooler weather as well. So I just need more knitting hours in the week. Can we extend the week maybe a little bit? Anyway, so an old undocumented project, a new cast on using absolutely lovely, lovely yarns. And that is my week in knitting. There were no brown paper packages this week, so it is now time for Bits and Bobs, and this is my segment where I talk about anything and everything not necessarily knitting related. And you may notice that we have a little visitor here. This is Tasha, and Tasha is, I believe, coming up on 16 years old, and she is Greg's favorite. He loves this cat, and she is very lovely. Anyway, she is popped up here and enjoying looking out at the waterfowl that are swimming by or flying by on the river. This week was a fairly quiet week. I think, let's see, I did mention that I went to a meeting and I needed a very simple project that didn't require too much thinking. And I've been feeling that knitting has been a bit taxing recently, so I've been needing to do some projects that maybe aren't as much thinking. And not that a 4-pattern repeat is a lot of thinking, but I just needed something simple to work on, so it was nice to have a couple of projects that are a little bit different. And yeah, that Sleeve Island I think is getting to me, even though I'm going to love that sweater when it's done. Yesterday, Nathaniel went on a ski trip with his class, and they went to Mount Seymour, which is a local mountain. So 10 degrees down here, go up into the mountains a short drive away, and you can go skiing. So Vancouver is a lot of fun for outdoorsy people. Me, I like to be indoorsy with my crafts, but Nathaniel had a good time skiing yesterday. His snow pants, however, are starting to get a little bit snug on him, so thank goodness it is the end of the winter season, or very close to if we're not quite there yet. He also has been doing some work with a group called Bard on the Beach, and they are a Shakespearean group, and they do workshops with kids, and they also, on a beach nearby, I'm not sure, somewhere in Vancouver, they do Shakespearean plays, kind of like Shakespeare in the Park, but they do it Shakespeare on the Beach. And so they have been working with the kids on As You Like It, which is my favorite Shakespearean play. And Nathaniel got his role last week. So they have split his role. He is playing Ganymede, and if you're familiar with As You Like It, the main character, Rosalind, is a girl who pretends to be a boy pretending to be a girl. And so there is one person who has been assigned the role of Rosalind, and then Nathaniel has been assigned the role of Rosalind's alter ego, Ganymede. So there will be a girl playing Rosalind, and then Nathaniel will be the girl pretending to be a boy, pretending to be a girl. And so he's really looking forward to that. And so tonight he has his practice after school. They do it every Thursday. And I'm hoping that at some point they'll have something where parents can go and see, because I think that would be really fun to see. Plus, as I mentioned, As You Like It is my favorite Shakespearean play. Trying to think, Isaac is going to be taking a course, this Saturday he's going to be doing his swimming instructor recertification, and he's hoping to get a job lifeguarding and instructing this summer. And he's got some other stuff going on that in the next couple of weeks maybe I'll be able to share a little bit more about that. But right now things are fairly quiet with him. He did bring home some lovely Earl Grey for me to enjoy as well. And I did mention that I have baked a cake, which is now cooling because it is Greg's birthday today, and we are going to have a few people over this evening and enjoy some vanilla cake, which is from the Recipe Tin website. I absolutely love Nagy's recipes, and she's got a book coming out, and I believe this vanilla cake recipe is in the book, but it is online. It uses some interesting techniques, so I made it from scratch, and you need to melt the butter in and warm some milk on the stove top, and then you have to kind of cool it down with a little bit of batter, and then you mix it all up, but you don't overmix it. It does smell absolutely delicious in here. And then I do have the buttercream icing also set aside for when it's ready and cooled so that I can ice the cake. And then we've invited some of our neighbors over. We haven't told them it's Greg's birthday because we didn't want to make them, feel like they had to go out and, pick up a card or anything like that. So we're just going to have them over for dessert and tea. We'll let them know it's his birthday at that point. We will sing him happy birthday, but that is what is happening here. Off of the float, yesterday, Isaac phoned home at some point, and I picked up the phone, and I was just standing looking outside, and I saw this little head popping out of the water, and of course I'm talking to him, and I'm trying to find my camera. It was an otter just off of our deck, and I did unfortunately not unfortunately capture him on film. But later on yesterday, there were a bunch of crows just flying over the house, and then they landed in the tree behind, and then they flew across. So I do have some footage of that, and I'm going to put that here because I always find seeing the crows flocking together every night, I find that really fascinating to watch. So I will pop that right here. The crows have just flown from across the river over here, and unfortunately I wasn't able to grab my camera fast enough. They were flying just right over the house, and then they've landed here, and they are about to do their commute to Burnaby. They're all having a little chatter at first, telling the day's gossip. Oh, and here they go. Some of them flying back across, and I'm going to stand over here. They seem to be going back to where they came from. And they're all just flying overhead. Some of them have landed on the bank, others are up in the tree, and they're still flying across. And I'll do a zoom in a second once they've finished flying, so you can see them all on the bank and in the trees. They don't gather every night in this location. Apparently what they do is they sort of change things up, but it's really neat when the murder of crows all gathers and then they all start their flight back to Burnaby. But you can definitely hear them as they plan to head home for the night. The crows have now just started leaving the trees, and They are all starting to fly together to Burnaby, and it is one of the most amazing things to see in real life. I know I've caught it a couple of times on camera, but it was really neat earlier when they flew over the house and then flew back again. But they generally follow this path over here and go just a little bit more east of us. But hundreds and hundreds of crows gathering every night, different parts of the city, and then they all fly to a place in Burnaby where they rest for the night. There's still crows coming, and they do it in a couple of waves, and this is the first wave here, but it looks like most of them have cleared out of the trees. There's still a few more leaving the trees right now, but the big wave has now gone. As I took that pause, I just looked up and saw two eagles swooping down at each other, but they have now disappeared out of my line of vision. I just find watching the birds around here can be completely fascinating, as this one does as well. Anyway, I am hoping at some point I will be able to capture otters on the river, because they are kind of interesting to see, but I wasn't sure whether it was an otter or a fish head that was sticking its head out the window, out of the water, but I did realize that it was an otter, because most fish don't stick their head out of the water, at least that far. Anyway, I think that is all for Bits and Bobs today. As I mentioned, it has been a fairly quiet week. Thank you so much for joining me on Knitting on the Float this week. I hope that you have had a chance to sit down and relax while we have visited and I have chatted away about the projects that I've worked on this week. I do think that this has been probably a shorter episode than normal, but as I mentioned, Greg's birthday, I've also got the cake that I've got to deal with as well. Anyway, I am wishing you the most wonderful, wonderful week ahead, and I look forward to sitting down with you next week and sharing whatever I've gotten up to. I am hoping that it involves some work on some sleeves, some work on that snuggle down, nice, cozy cowl, and I'm really hoping that I put in some time on my beautiful test knit, because even though I can't share it with you at this point, I would like to get some more done so that when it is released, I will be able to share it in its full entirety. Anyway, I am wishing you the most wonderful, wonderful week ahead, and I will see you next week on Knitting on the Float. Bye. Look at these beautiful, beautiful cakes. They are definitely cooling down nicely. As I mentioned, they smell delicious. And over here, I have the buttercream icing. I've asked Greg to pick up some Cadbury mini eggs because I think that'd be really nice to decorate this cake. But yummy, yummy vanilla cake. And as I mentioned, from Recipe 10, next week I'll have to remember to let you know how it tastes.